I saw an interesting tweet today on my timeline, and it says, "One of my pet peeves in high fantasy books is using certain words or phrases that have no place in a fantasy setting that isn't Earth. I don't know if that makes sense, but it drives me insane." Now, I'm sure you've already formed an idea of what kinds of words and or phrases this person might be referring to, but there are some examples provided by people in the replies. One person noting that a fantasy book they read used the word ballpark instead of estimate, another saying pull the trigger and jump the gun were used in settings with no firearms, another mentioning Tolkien's use of out of the frying pan and into the fire in The Hobbit, and of course another person mentioning looks like meat is back on the menu, boys, which would imply the existence of sit-down restaurants in Mordor. Of course, strange, there are no sit-down restaurants in Mordor. Regardless of if you agree with these particular examples, I find the original tweet interesting because it speaks to a general issue that people often have with fantasy settings. When a character in a vastly different setting from Earth uses familiar slang and phrases such as the ones mentioned, it can draw people out of their immersion because there is a part of their brain that's telling them that something isn't right. Of course, the reason for that is because upon accepting that you're witnessing a different fantastical world, part of your brain therefore assumes that that world's history and linguistical development would have also been at least somewhat different. That world wouldn't have been influenced by certain writers such as Shakespeare, or certain world events, or certain cultural phenomena by which unique phrases and words come about. And so when those phrases are used without acknowledging that fact, it can come across as jarring, perhaps inauthentic. Of course, I should mention I'm working on my own sci-fi fantasy book series. This is an issue that I have been acutely aware of and have been doing my best to avoid falling into. It is important to ensure that characters from different worlds with greatly different histories and cultures are able to reflect those differences.